want people who are going to demonstrate, really strong and informed interest in their school. I mean, they want to be wanted, right? Everyone's always asking, how can you actually prepare for a successful interview? And it starts with knowing what each individual college is looking for. What kind of candidates is the school looking to attract? How can you get a feel for them through their website, their marketing materials? People that have gone to the school. Also the essays. Michael, I was talking last night about the supplemental essay webinar that we did a few weeks back, where we looked at like Chicago and Harvard, like side by side, and in that juxtaposition, we learned so much about the character of the school just by looking at the questions they're asking and like the form. And then how do you actually personally demonstrate those traits in terms of your interests, your extracurriculars, personal qualities, community engagement. And then, with all that, schools want people who are going to demonstrate, really strong and informed interest in their school. I mean, they want to be wanted, right? So find out what makes that school special. Be prepared to talk about those specific aspects that appeal to you. Include why are you applying? What makes this school special? If you're passionate about the history of, say, Russian revolutions, is there maybe a scholar at that particular university that is a leading specialist in that domain? Also, what are you going to be able to contribute to the school, right? Specifically, maybe a particular extracurricular that really sticks out to you, or a certain kind of program, in the community. We have to make sure that we're avoiding generic statements like, I want to study with the top people in the field, and that's why I want to apply to Harvard. Do you know what I'm saying? So, Michael, I'm going to just sort of show people here a sample interview or worksheet. I'm just going to reshare the screen. Let's see, is it this one? Yeah, it's this guy right here. I'm sharing this right now, and would love to kind of hear, your from the perspective of the admissions officer and the interviewer side, right? I'm showing this interviewer worksheet. I'll scroll through it in a second while you're talking, but would love to kind of hear, from your perspective, what are you really looking for? I mean, I've sort of given some ideas and some statements here, but what are you really looking for from the person on the other side of the table?
Well, it's interesting. We've done a couple sessions before, and one of the things we've talked about is fit. How does the student fit into that community in terms of someone that would make sense in terms of who they are and how they would fit into that community? And so I think in many ways, having done your homework in terms of understanding kind of just the example you used by reading the Chicago questions versus the Harvard questions, you get a sense of what kind of student this person is and what kind of community that college is. And I think the interviewer wants to hear that. For example, we all know, Columbia has a very structured core curriculum. Brown has a very flexible curriculum. You start talking to an interviewer at Columbia and start talking about flexible curriculum, they're going to know you didn't do your homework, in terms of that you haven't paid attention to what the school is all about. And to be able to use the Columbia example is, I want to be able to have a structured curriculum initially, so I can try different disciplines of things that the school thinks I should follow, and then make the decision about what I'm going to major in is very different than the way you'd respond to that question to a place like Brown. So again, as an interviewer, I'm going to listen to hear, how is the student going to fit in with us? Do they understand how we function? Do they understand the things that we do at our particular school? Brown is famous for its pass-fail options for kids to try courses in a discipline that they may never have wanted to try. Say that to me in the interview and I'll say, this kid has done their homework. So, those are the kinds of things that if you do that well, I think that's important. And the things you have up here, they're great. You start thinking about, has the student challenged themselves, and how will they challenge themselves with us? What's the kind of growth they have? How do they know about us, and why do they think we're a good match? As an interviewer, I want to hear from the student why they think they're a good match for us, not why I think we're a good match for them. And I have to be honest with you, there were some times when I would interview a student and I'd get pretty well through the interview and I say, I'm not sure Brown's the right place for you.
Really?
you might want to be thinking about some other schools that fit more in terms of the kinds of things you're talking about. And, I think a good admissions person, if they're doing their job well, shouldn't be about how many more applications can we get,
Right.
but how can we help the student make the right decision? And if we're not the right decision, that's okay.
So, with all of that, I've been sort of sharing and kind of like scrolling up a little bit up and down the first thing, these two pages of this sample interviewer worksheet for our viewing audience, whether live or recorded. This was adapted from actual materials used at an Ivy League university. And Michael, you have mentioned a couple of things here in the intellectual engagement and curiosity, some of these bullets about challenging themselves. There's a thing here about extracurriculars, character. Then there's a summary analysis. And at this particular school, they are sort of giving a rating to a candidate. How common is it for interviewers to give a rating? How common is it for someone to be like outstanding? Just sort of what's your perspective on the report and the level of support that an interviewer might give to a school post-interview?
Yep. I don't know if it would be as broad as this would be, but certainly in the alumni interviews that we would do at Brown, we would be looking to see whether the recommendation was, positive, lukewarm, or not at all. And so I think that I would see those three categories as opposed to six categories here in terms of that. But I think, they can be pretty direct in terms of that. The one piece that I see up here that I want to highlight just for a second is going back to the concept of fit. When I would interview a student, I would always try to figure out, would this kid be a good roommate? Because, before the COVID times, everybody had a roommate, and would this be a person that somebody would want to live with, that would be a good person to be with in terms of, how they would contribute to the school. So character was very, very important to me in the interview process. But I would caution, I'm looking at point number 3 here, and it does make me a little nervous. It said, are there any extenuating circumstances of which the admission office should be aware? I'd be very careful with responding to that part in an actual interview. Again, you'd have no idea in terms of how it might be used. For example, particularly with an alumni interviewer, who knows how they might, use something like, I suffered from depression. I don't think that's something that you want to be sharing in a character statement in an interview. If that's going to be shared, that should be shared after the fact with the school, after you've decided to go there, so that the school can make sure they put in a buffer network to support you so you wouldn't suffer from those kinds of things. So I think that you got to be careful sometimes what you share in advance rather than what you can share after the fact.
So this is interesting. So, this document it was written by the admissions office at the university. So even though they may be asking that question or somehow nibbling around that question, you're saying if that question comes up, probably best to sidestep it as best you can.
I'd be guarded how you responded. Yeah. I think sometimes a student may think, boy, if I show them I overcame something, that'll really impress them. It may also raise a red flag too. So just be careful about those kinds of things. Yeah.
So if you want to take a look at that worksheet and download it for your own purposes, just go to katestutoring.com/college-interviewer-worksheets.